We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Antry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. The television upfronts are coming up, so we found out which shows got canceled, and Fox was very Fox about being Fox. They pretty much canceled everything good on their network.
My wife was distraught that they canceled Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
They did. Everyone was distraught for a while until...
for about 5 minutes until NBC picked it up, immediately.
NBC's like, hey, we make that show on the Universal lot. Why don't we just air it instead? Good on them.
My understanding is that Fox was upset because they're not getting anything to streaming, which I think a lot of the viewership is doing it via streaming as it goes to Hulu.
Yes, for sure.
I'm like, so where does NBC streaming go to? Does it go to Netflix?
I'm pretty sure they're Hulu as well. Pretty darn sure.
Who cares? Whatever, I guess.
I don't know.
I'm excited there are going to be some more episodes because I don't want to listen to my wife complain.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it's going into season 6 already. I'm like, there's a show that went by quick.
It did, and we are almost caught up. I mean, we're watching the current season now as it comes out. So, I think it comes out on Sundays. Is that right? It feels like it comes out on Sundays.
It has been, this season it has been, season 5. So, but I'm very disappointed that Last Man on Earth got canceled and nobody else has picked that up. So that's gone. The Mick, which was really funny. They canceled that. How did they cancel the Mick? That doesn't make any sense. Why would they cancel that? Dumb.
We started watching AP Bio. My wife was finally getting into it, and then the season ended. She's like, "There's only one season." I'm like, "Honey, not every show we watch. But it's been around for 5 years." That
got renewed, and very surprisingly, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. got renewed for another season, which I couldn't believe.
But I just gave up on that show. I gave up on the show when when what's-her-name's husband turned out to be the spiky dude, and I was like, what? I'm out of this thing.
Yeah. And then for some reason, Fox is like, we'll cancel everything good, but we'll give Gotham another season. So
I never got through the first season. It was so bad. It was so bad.
It's the final season coming up, though, so at least that gave them they'll be able to conclude.
They got the Joker on there now and everything. I'm like, dude.
They keep saying it's not really the Joker, and
the guy's going like this with his hair and his face is white. He's got the big smile.
It was definitely it's proto.
It's a killing joke.
Yeah, I know. And then
Joker.
Bruce Wayne still very much looks like a teenager, but they're like, he'll basically, we have to show him as Batman, and this is like the final shot next season. So it's gonna be like a 16-year-old Batman.
Why would he be Batman already? First of all, I felt the same way about Star Wars Rebels or whatever it was. When you have a show about the guy who's going to end up being Darth Vader and killing a bunch of kids,
a known ending point,
a known ending. And this is the main character. Like, now we've got Gotham. It's a Batman show where Batman's not Batman yet.
That's right.
Why would anybody care? I mean, why do you even call it Gotham? I mean, just call it.
Well, it was supposed to be all about James Gordon, but then they're like, well, James Gordon, first of all, they pretty much character assassinated James Gordon on their show, so he's not a very honorable guy anymore, but that wasn't enough, so they brought in all the villains. Moving on from that, The Expanse got canceled, the sci-fi show, and everyone was very upset about that after 3 seasons, so.
Okay, so I know I saw the first season, I think, on Amazon Prime. Uh-huh. They had that, and I thought that was a very good show. I thought it was very good. But I didn't catch the second season anywhere, so I'm gonna try.
I never really kept up with it, so.
Yeah. I thought it was okay. Upset. I mean, it was interesting. It had some stuff going for it.
Yeah.
It's sci-fi though. I mean, sci-fi can't make a TV. Let's be honest.
Apparently,
they cannot make a TV show.
Battlestar Galactica, one and done.
Well,
they did it once.
That feels very lucky. I got to be honest with you. I mean, after Eureka, which I mean, there's a bunch of shows I liked that were on Sci-Fi. Eureka and many of the Stargates that they had out there were okay, but they all devolved into the exact same formula. It was all very episodic. They never been
no money.
Very good. Well, they are, but you can still do a show that has a plot that goes through everything, and they weren't really able to do that too well. It's like a couple of episodes at the end that makes sense. Anywho,
yes,
this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to www.avrant.com. You can leave a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRantPodcast. YouTube.com/AVRant. If you want to contact us directly, just don't leave comments at YouTube. If you do, don't argue with the people who are leaving comments on there, because they're very confused as to what they have come across. What is this 2-hour-long show that has a bunch of outdated information that clearly has a date on it, but I am not going to read it and pretend that it was just published yesterday because I just found it just now. Just let them rail. Let them scream into the void that is YouTube. If you want to contact us directly, it's rob@avrant.com. His Twitter's @FirstReflect. I am Tom @avrant.com. My Twitter is @avrant_Tom. So our donation pledge week has completed.
It's completed.
I have not totaled everything, but we definitely cleared the $300 mark.
We did.
Definitely. No doubt. I think if everybody gave like $10, we all got. I mean, it was kind of ridiculous by the end here how many people we have on this list. So first of all, big thanks to everybody, especially our anonymous donor who started this thing off, and James C and Dipan, who are all our pledge matchers. So they, between the three of them, each one offered to pledge match up to $100 each. And I told Rob at the end of the last podcast, I'm like, dude, there's no way we're hitting $300. It ain't happening. I mean, I was looking at it thinking, who listens to this podcast that regularly? I figure like you catch an episode and you're like, all right, I had 2 hours of those guys. Right. I'm good for a month or two. Maybe I'll listen again later. But we think we just got another one. We're going to have to.
All right. Well, in the meantime, I'll say thank you very much to Anonymous and James and Dipan. And I'm pretty sure they're not going to ask for it, but if you require receipt evidence that we reached the $300 threshold, I guess get in touch with Tom @avrant.com. He can provide it.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't want to I didn't want to go through and make a big list because it was too much. Anyways, add Chad to the end of the list.
Alrighty. There we go. So I'm just going to repeat the names as Tom says them so that we can get through it before half an hour elapses.
You can just say ditto at the end. But anyways, all right. In order of donation received, we will start with Paul. Earl. Nate. James D. Clarence. Shane. Daniel C. Terry G. James F. Tom D. David P. Tom T. Weldon, and it says Weldon B, but come on, we only have one Weldon.
Thanks, Weldon.
You know who you are. Larry L. Daniel M. Christian S. Jason D. What is this? Great. Another Jason W. This one with Jay.
That's right, Jason W.
In Australia. He's in Australia. Roger H. Keith S. Grant S. Jonathan F. Steve T. Brandon W. Peter S. Ian E. McMansion Chris. Douglas J. Ben M. Fred R. Greg L. And we're still going. Richard R. Bret R. Matthew L. Vincent H. Jack R. David F. Paul B. Robert B. Brent R. Joe K. And Chad.
Thank you for slipping in under the wire there, Chad. And
he emailed me. He was like, he was having problems with PayPal. Right?
That's right. That was Chad. Okay.
That was Chad, and I was like, I don't have time to fix it. Don't worry, we got enough. We're fine. We're fine, Chad. But he figured it out, dude. He figured it out. So good job, Chad. Thank all of you guys for making this.
Thank you all so much. I mean, is that nearly as long as the list from Ted's Gambit 2 years ago?
It does feel that way.
It feels awfully close. That is awesome. Thank you all so much.
I will go through and figure out how much, because I already sent whatever. The matching pledge was $300. I sent that to Rob already, so that's gone. So when you send it to me, it's already spent. I already spent it to Rob. But the rest of it, I'll have to figure out and then split that with Rob as well. But it's going to take me a few minutes to figure that out.
That is okay. Thank you all so much.
All right. We also want to thank if you're wondering how that all happened, all these people went to www.avrant.com and clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and left us a PayPal donation. Those PayPal donations go into our coffers to help pay for things like, I don't know, what are you going to buy, Rob? You got money?
I'm not, I had no plans for that. Hey, maybe I'll get an NVIDIA Shield.
There you go.
I do want one. Well, I really should just write to them and see if they'll give me one for free.
That would be easier. I have a contact over there. I think I can.
But if they don't, maybe I can buy that. There you go. Sweet.
If nothing else, you can get maybe accommodation pricing. Sometimes they'll do that. I mean, you're going to talk about it. It's not like you don't already talk about it in the podcast.
I can give them evidence.
It's not even that. You can answer the questions better. So there you go. So thank you very much, all you guys that pay for stuff and hosting fees and other things like that, and all the stuff that goes along with this. I might buy a new mic. I'm currently in hate of this mic. It's just there's too much. I want something.
The mic is good. What you really need is a new stand.
It's the whole thing is a mess, Rob.
Okay.
I want one that can move.
Yeah.
Anywho. If you would like to support us in a different way, there's always Patreon. Patreon's a website where you can sign up to give a monthly donation to our podcast. Lots of people do it to support their favorite artists on the web. Mm-hmm. We currently have 59 patrons, one of which is Jeff K. So thank you to all of our 59 patrons.
Yeah, that's patreon.com/AVRant podcast. Thanks so much to our 59 patrons. And Jeff, thanks for being one of them.
Well, if you can't support the podcast in that way, just figure out some way that you can and let us know what you did. So Tom, not me, Tom D, ordered 7 Elite home theater seating recliners and let them know he decided to go with them because of us. I think it's mostly because of Rob, but it is also because of us.
I have mentioned them, and I own Elite home theater seating recliners. They are not inexpensive.
Those are the good ones.
They're one of the more expensive, but they are very nice, and I am very sure, Tom, that you will be satisfied with them. So thank you very much for mentioning us to them.
I wish I knew what a couch I had. I just literally went to a store and said, and with a tape measure, and went, okay, everybody put your bottoms in this one. Yeah, we can fit. that was pretty much what it came down to. So I wish I had that. But all right, in the news here. THX launched their THX Standard website, which feels like it should be Standards. Not Standard, because it sounds
pretty sure it's singular in the THXStandard.com, so no S on the end of that.
That's a weird. It just sounds like this is our standard website, but we have our advanced one over
right
here. But you have to pay for that.
I didn't create it.
Anyways, they claim to list objective measurements and comparisons that are unbiased by an editorial perspective. Audioholics, specifically Gene in particular, immediately latched onto that and started looking at their amplifier section, which is what he is most comfortable analyzing, and found some issues. Some of which they changed directly afterwards because it was just misprints.
Misprints of some graphs. But that didn't change any of the scores or things that they said. And not surprisingly, the amplifier that is presently listed on that website that scores the highest is the THX designed one by Benchmark Audio.
Yeah.
Who would have thunk it? Not only that, but the way that they went through their TVs, I found peculiar. And not exactly the most useful, because they went by the out-of-the-box picture mode, whatever that is.
Oh, God.
And then also the movie/cinema mode, or whatever is called.
Oh, well, okay, yeah.
Which is generally okay. However, if the gamma that's being used strays away from the now ratified BT 1886 standard for standard dynamic range, they knock it way down for doing that. And I'm like, but you didn't bother to check any of the other picture modes to see if any of them hold to BT 1886 instead of just the movie/cinema mode. For example, the LG OLED that they have on there, the movie mode is not the most accurate mode. The most accurate mode would be the Technicolor Expert mode or the ISF Night mode. or dark room mode.
Yeah,
and they didn't bother with those. They just went to the cinema mode, which uses I think it targets the 2.4 gamma, which is very close to 1886, but not the same thing. So I'm like, so you didn't really even, and then like David Katzenmeier mentioned on the 2017 models, in order to get the gamma exactly right, you have to click the brightness setting up by one click from 50 to 51. But they don't touch that. They're just like, no. So of course, the TV that's on there that has a THX picture mode, magically it scored the highest. So yeah, they say it's unbiased by editorial perspective, except, well, if you have a THX mode, magically you score higher, so maybe you should pay us the money to get a THX certification. Yeah.
Well, from a perspective, okay, I do not hate the idea of them giving a measurement and a score based on out-of-the-box settings.
Sure, yeah, no, I'm okay with that too.
I think that to me feels like something that's valuable, because if you're buying a TV, not for yourself, but for somebody else, and they're not going to touch anything when it comes out of that box, no matter what you tell them to do, it's nice to know that out of the box what they're going to be getting.
Yep.
To me, it also, on some level, tells me something about that company. It tells me that company cares or doesn't care, what they care about.
Yeah.
If it comes out and it's like super vivid, oversaturated, everything super
very
bright,
blue.
Very blue, looks good on a showroom floor stuff. I'm like, okay, guys, okay, that I see what you care about here. But if it's at least close, then it tells me something else. The rest of it's just, you kind of want to say, there's a fine line between setting up a standard that you follow for your review so that everyone is exactly
right.
You treat everyone exactly the same, and setting up a standard that unfairly biases some things, maybe intentionally or unintentionally. Like for most, cinema mode or theater mode or whatever, usually is the right setting.
It usually is, yeah.
But there should be some flexibility within your thing to say, hey, yes, there is a cinema mode here, but the correct setting should be this other one.
Right.
And I think that not clicking it up the one brightness to make it absolutely perfect, I would have been okay with that, because that's not something you're going to be able to just do without some research. That's okay too.
It's just, like to give it a score.
Yeah.
And just be like, because they know that people are just going to look at the number, like, this number's higher, and magically it's the one that has THX mode, right? I mean, going back to the audio amplifiers, the way that Gene, deep dove on it, he's like, if you look at the description of what they say they're looking for, and then you observe the graphs that they've posted of the measurements that they took, and then you see the score number that they gave it, he's like, these things do not line up.
Yeah.
They're like, they described what they're looking for. The graphs show that they got what they were looking for, and yet it scored like a 70. Why? There's no other explanation to tell you why the score got lowered for seemingly no reason. So things like that. But basically, I'm like, now when I see THX doing this, I all I can picture is like Ralph Wiggum alone on a playing ground going, "I'm relevant." Like that's.
I'll tell you what. If I was in the boardroom when they were making the decision to do this, I would have been like, I don't know, man.
Well, they are owned by Razer now. I mean, I had forgotten about that until Gene mentioned it. I'm like, oh, they're not even THX anymore.
Company?
They're Razer. So,
no, it's just there's very. You'd have to really, really try to come out smelling like a rose out of this thing. Somebody's gonna have a problem with what you say, and if you put yourself on the top, you better make dang sure you have a very good explanation for why that is. Yeah. And clearly they don't as of yet. So we'll see what happens in the future. But
I would just say to anyone listening to this, by all means, go ahead and check it out. That's fine, but I would not put my eggs in that basket and be like, oh, whatever has the highest number on THX standard, that's what I'm going to buy. I would not advise that.
Yeah, we'll see how relevant it ends up being in the future. All right, some comments from some listeners. Infinite Gary looked it up for us. He actually sent me somebody sent me like a thing about it, but I couldn't read it because it was during the podcast, and then I forgot about it.
Okay.
Manatees hear about 10 times better than humans underwater.
Yes.
Only about half as well as dolphins.
Yep.
That does not tell me how well they hear above water, though.
It does not.
Because, I mean, if they can hear real good underwater, that's one thing. But if you put them above water and I hear better than them, then I win.
Yep. But they can hear higher frequencies than we can, because you have to remember sound travels faster in water than it does in air.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Denser medium. So since our hearing tops out at 20 kilohertz in air, it tops out at a much lower frequency in the water where the sound is traveling faster. So manatees can apparently hear up to, I think they said like 10,000 hertz, like 10 kilohertz or something in the water, which means they can hear to like 50 kilohertz in air, I guess.
Whatever, they're dumb. He also wanted to mention that he's finding some of the newer Atmos releases like Blade Runner 2049 and Saving Private Ryan are really sounding impressive now. He's getting that transports you to another world sort of experience with the 7.1.4 setup, which wasn't always the case with some of the first releases. So maybe sound mixers are starting to get a better feel for this Atmos stuff. And that's sort of why I've been shying away from really giving my opinion of Atmos. I got to be absolutely honest with you. I had a conversation with Clint the other day. We were talking about some other stuff from my other business, and he was talking about Atmos, and he's like, I don't know, man. I've got the speakers. I've got the receiver that could do it. I just don't know if it's worth it. I'm like, eh. He goes, is that your opinion of Atmos? I'm like, yeah, pretty much. That's my opinion right now. Kind of like, yeah, it's there. It's there. It's a thing that happens. But I'm still holding out hope that something's going to happen to make me change my mind. I have not been convinced yet, but I am not against being convinced.
Well, I certainly think it makes sense that the more experience and the more people that get into it, the better it's going to get. So, yeah, makes sense to me.
Keith. I don't know why my voice cracked. Keith just wanted to send us some good vibes along with the hopes that we reach the full $300 pledge drive donation match, which we did. He loves having two subwoofers thanks to our advice, and he appreciates our commitment and the banter we provide every week. Thank you, Keith.
Thanks, Keith.
Curt on Facebook says he tried some Blackweb brand HDMI cables from Walmart that have a certified premium label on their packaging. They didn't work with his Xbox One S feeding 4K to his TV. He thought it might have been his refurbished Denon receiver, but then he tried an HDMI cable from Sam's Club that mentioned 18 gigabits per second, but it did not have the certified premium label. Those work just fine, so he just wants us to be, or you to be forewarned. Really, looking for that 18 gigabits per second is really...
It seems so, yeah. Apparently the Blackweb is the like Walmart house brand.
Sure.
So,
it's not the dark web. It's a little different. There's the black web and there's the dark web. The black web are HDMI cables.
I haven't looked at the packaging, so I mean, the words certified and premium are not like trademarked, so I don't know if it is the official logo, because the official logo is supposed to mean that the darn things work. That's the whole point of getting it certified by HTML LLC, but I don't know, maybe it's not the actual logo and they're faking it or something.
It's Walmart, dude. Who knows? I will tell you this. I'm not going to tell you this. That's too long of a story, and it's just about tortilla chips. All right, Travis. I'll tell you later. Just wanted to share his listening impressions. He switched from GoldenEar Aon 3 bookshelf speakers to Martin Logan Motion 35XT bookshelf speakers. Both offer folded ribbon tweeters, and they do sound similar quite a lot of the time. But he also heard some significant differences. He found the GoldenEars to have an obvious emphasis in the mid-range. To him, the Martin Logan sound more even and balanced. The GoldenEars obviously extended lower into the bass, but he crosses over to an SVS sub, so he's fine with the Martin Logan's rolling off much higher. Overall, the Martin Logans sound clearer with better vocal intelligibility, but the GoldenEars could play louder. So he could easily see it coming down to a matter of preference or for other listeners, as well as what's other gear is being used, what's room size and listening distance you're using, but he's happy he made the switch in his case. So this is a really good example of doing that A-B, and even though you've got the exact same tweeter, or similar design,
similar
tweeter, type tweeter, you're getting a completely different listening experience. And he listened enough to be able to tell, and now he knows he's got the speakers he loves.
Yeah, and the importance of auditioning in your room, where
that's right.
These things can make a difference. Yeah,
they will make a difference going in your room
so.
Compared to whatever room you may be setting up. And I'm really hoping that my life will settle down a little bit after this new company gets started, my new business gets going, and I have a little bit of free time here and there. Hopefully I'm gonna start going to doing some listening, man. I haven't listened in quite some time. I'm really missing it. All right, let's get on to the questions here. Damien on Twitter, he came across a video on YouTube titled "Why SDR is Greater Than HDR." It should also be titled "Why You Shouldn't Use the Mic in Your Computer to Make a Video," because it is real hard to listen to. The mic keeps clipping too. It sounds like so. It's quite bad. Basically, from as much of it as I could stand to listen to, the argument seems to be SDR is everywhere, therefore it's better and people can use it, whereas HDR is brand new and it's not even like totally people have figured it out yet, so it sucks.
Yeah, it was tough to listen. I did manage to get through it.
You're a better man than me.
Struggled through it. However, what I do very much agree with, and what I think is fair, is to be confused and to be annoyed by the way HDR is being deployed. Well, I mean, think that is a reasonable complaint, because if you
look at the very first comment on there, it's like, oh, I got sold a bill of goods on this 4K stuff, took it home, plugged it in, and everything looks dark. I'm like, yep.
Yep.
This is not a problem with HDR.
When it asks for 5 nits, you only get 5 nits now. You don't get 20 like it used to when you cranked up your backlight before. Yeah.
So, and I honestly, I do not blame the user for that.
That's right.
Okay, if you've been listening to this podcast, you know that this is a common problem that people run across. They get this new HDR stuff, it looks real dark, and it's because calibration and setup is slightly different, and it's not really clear, and it shouldn't be. It should be clear, but it shouldn't be different. It should be, you should be able to turn it on, and it works kind of like we've gotten SDR at this point to do. Whereas you turn on the TV, you switch it to the right mode, and you're 90% of the way to full calibration. Yeah, or if more.
There's the further confusion, which is there are displays out there where you can send it an HDR signal, and you have to manually put it into HDR mode.
Oh, right.
It doesn't auto-detect and switch itself. Like, these are usability things that I would not expect my mom to know about, right?
Well, if you're an early adopter, you got to expect that you're going to run into these sort of things. This is why I don't, when people say to me right now, should I buy, 4K or something like that? I'm like, well, if you're buying a TV, you're getting 4K. You got no choice.
Pretty much.
But if you're looking to upgrade just because you want to upgrade, I'd wait. And part of the reason is these people that I'm normally talking to, or just people I meet at a party or whatever, they're not the listeners of this podcast. They're the people who are going to turn it on and go, it's dark, I don't get it, and then that's going to be the end of it.
Right.
They're going to be confused and they're going to be unhappy.
Yeah.
And for those people, I'm like, just wait until they figure it out, and then we can. Then you'll be able to plug and play, maybe 2 years from now.
So, I mean, as much as I was, grin and bearing it to go through, because the inclination, especially on YouTube, is to like try and tear apart the things that this guy said that are, factually incorrect or that were just a misunderstanding. But I do want to say, so do not watch this video and take the things he says as fact, because there are many errors in what he says.
Yes.
But what is totally fair is being confused by this stuff, and I'm not going to go through things bullet by point by bullet point. The one thing I want to mention that is important is that he's like, when they're claiming 1,000 or 1,500 nits or whatever, that's only on a 2 or a 10% window, not the entire screen. And I'm like, yeah, could you imagine like 1,500 nits on the entire screen? That isn't what HDR is supposed to be. It is supposed to be a little highlight, a little glint of something. Right. So that's a misunderstanding, but he's explaining it as they're lying to us. They're telling us this TV can do 1,000 nits.
You don't want to have 1,000 nits coming out of every pixel of that screen at you.
That would be unpleasant to look at. Even in a lit room, that would be too bright.
That would be quite bright.
But
it would be uncomfortable.
The fair part is, okay, that's a misunderstanding. That's something that this fellow didn't fully comprehend. But where is it really properly explained if you're just going to a store and buying a TV? You really have to research it to figure this stuff out. So, I think it is too complicated. I would like there to not be 5 different HDR formats, no TV that can do all 5 of them. That's annoying stuff. So, on that part, I wholly agree.
So, and we get into this all the time. Every time a new technology comes out, we talked about this, 2 or 3 years ago were like, we hope it doesn't come down to an HDR format war, and then here we are.
And it isn't really, because if you get the whatever other format, it'll go down to HDR10, so it's not as though you get a blank screen.
Right. It's not quite that bad, but at the same time, from the perspective of the manufacturers, what they're looking at is, I don't want to pay licensing fees to Dolby. I don't want to have.
I don't want Dolby to do the tone mapping for me. I think I know better.
Right.
Panasonic.
Well, it could be a lot of things. There's a lot of stuff that goes on to this. So, they can't, maybe they don't want to wait until somebody else comes out with their HDR format.
Yeah.
They're like, we need to be relevant right now. We need to come out with a TV that can do HDR right now. We'll come out with our one that does one, and then, we'll see what else comes out as well, because it's not like they're inventing them 5 minutes before they release. It takes years of time.
Yeah, well, look, even the past 2 weeks on the HT guys, right, Ara and Braden, the HD TV and home theater podcast, right, they've been talking about HDR, and they've been misspeaking all over the place, because there's HDR10 and HDR10-Plus, and Dolby Vision and HLG and HDR Technicolor, there's these 5 different formats, and they're, so they had one guy who wrote in who was confused about it. He's like, how come there's no TV that does both HDR10 and Dolby Vision? And they're like, I thought there were, but he was actually meaning HDR10 Plus, because it's just a little plus symbol on the end of HDR10. So it's like, it's needlessly confusing.
It is needlessly confusing. Damien continues. Which Sony projectors have the active HDR solution that Sony claims makes their HDR10 performance so similar to Dolby Vision? I don't know. Which one?
Yeah, so this is a similar thing to like what LG does in their OLEDs, which is active HDR. So an HDR10 signal comes in, they ignore the static metadata, and they just analyze the signal frame by frame and do their own tone mapping based off of that, which is what I wish projectors would do. That I think that's the way to handle it in projectors, because you don't know all the variables, so you can't program the metadata effectively ahead of time, like Dolby Vision would do, but you don't want to just rely on static metadata that's asking for potentially 10,000 nits, because no projector can do that. So it makes sense to me. Analyze the signal frame by frame and do it yourself. Let the projector do it yourself. So Sound and Vision, when they wrote their review of the Sony VPL VW285, ES, which is the $5,000 4K, genuine 4K projector that they have, that's where I first came across this mention that Sony has an active HDR solution. So it is their presently newest models, the 285, the 385, and the 885. So if it ends in an 85, those are the projectors that have it.
We just got another donation from Dale.
Okay. We could let him be next week's
donor. Dale, you're going on next week. You're going to make the cut, buddy.
Okay.
It's all right.
That works.
Dale's next week.
Cool.
So, lastly, I think it's lastly. Yep. Isn't it lastly? Yes. Lastly, Damien mounted his on-wall speakers as surrounds. I guess he wall-mounted his surround speakers.
Yes.
It looks like bookshelves of some sort.
They are. They're Pioneer bookshelves up there. Yeah.
He asks if they are too high. He won't bother changing it in this house since he'll be moving in the near future, but for this next setup, how high should be mounted? Okay, so you want the tweeter to have a direct line of sight to every ear.
Yeah.
Now, where you have them mounted, unless your people are ginormous and also standing, the tweeter, even if they're standing, the tweeter will have a direct line of sight. Is it too high? Yeah, they're too high, but they're not unless your room's like Hobbit size, because we can't see the rest of the room.
That's right. So, I'm going to assume it's at least 7 feet tall, though.
Yeah, they should be probably from where your ear is, like 2 feet up and 2 feet, 1 foot back. Maybe is a pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, generally, if you get the tweeter of the speaker about 4.5 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
So the tweeter of the speaker about 4.5, 5 feet off the ground. These look like they're pretty darn close to the ceiling up there. So I imagine they're higher than that. So I would say in an ideal scenario, that would be higher than I would place them. We should mention Dolby wants you to just have them at ear level, but we don't agree with that because it doesn't make any sense to us to block the sound from one side of the room from reaching the person on the other side of the couch by having people in between. So we would elevate it somewhat, just enough to get it above the people's heads, but not right up to the ceiling.
Damien, if you're not running Atmos speakers in this setup, this is a perfectly valid way to set these speakers up.
It is fine. Yeah.
It is all about having them lower than this is so that you have more differentiation between the above, the overhead speakers. Like, I don't care what Dolby tells you, what bill of goods they're selling these days. They never suggested having their surround speakers at ear level before Atmos.
Definitely not.
They changed every one night. It was like a mass purge of Wikipedia. They went in and changed all the websites. No, we have never suggested that you should have your speakers anything other than what are you talking about? It was always elevated. There were always elevated speakers. So if you are not running Atmos, I wouldn't worry about lowering your speakers. I gotta be dead honest with you. I would just leave them exactly where they are. I would. Michael, this comes from Twitter. Michael would like to replace the fabric on his acoustic panels with covers that have custom art printed on them. Where do we recommend for getting the prints and the fabric? What's his name? Rob W.
Yes.
Used Spoonflower before they stopped letting you put posters on there because of all the legality of it. But
which,
you
by
can
the
put
way,
other stuff.
I don't blame Spoonflower one bit, because if it were my business, I don't want to get sued out of existence by copyright holders. But so Spoonflower is still a great place to go if you own the rights to the image. So it's a picture you took, or you actually own the piece of artwork, or you bought the piece of artwork that says you're allowed to reprint it. Yeah. As long as you can show that it's legal for them to print it, they'll print it. So that's no problem. So Spoonflower is a great place to go. For the fabric choice, look for one of the cotton fabrics, a non-stretchy cotton, because those are usually pretty good for the acoustic transparency, and they give you a nice quality print. So Spoonflower has Kona brand cotton, and that's a good fabric to use. But there is another place that you can go, which I haven't really looked into them very recently. They're sort of where everyone went when Spoonflower stopped printing anything that was copyright protected.
Right.
So that's another place called My Fabric Designs. So you can look into them.
He asks, how difficult is it to wrap the new fabric over its existing panels? Do the printers include instructions? They do not. If you look at Rob W's write-up on our website, www.avrant.com, you will see that what he did is he took the image and he printed it on the fabric. Then he left a black bar around that was the size of the side of his panels, and then he put a small white border around that. That was only a couple of pixels wide. The idea here is that what he was doing was that when he wrapped it around, he could see that border and knew where to place the fabric, where to staple it down on the back of his things, so that he wasn't trying to line it up upside down, basically.
Right.
Yeah. That's the way he did it, and I think that's a very good way to do it.
Yeah, so you have to know the outer dimensions of the frame of your panel. And so you want to account for the entire front surface area. That's where your image is going to be. Then what would be the depth of your panel? Like, is your panel 2 inches deep, 4 inches deep? You want to know the depth of that panel. And then another, 1.5, 2 inches beyond that, so that it can wrap around the back. And that's where you secure it to the back of the frame. So
now, the other solution to this is not to worry too much about that, not to be crazy about it, because what he had is a completely, frameless setup. What you could do is put a little piece of 1 by whatever the thickness is on the outside here, just to give it a hard edge.
Yeah,
right around the outside.
Creating your own little frame edge.
That's right. And then that way you would not have to worry quite so much about it. Once you got it secured, you could kind of look at it and say, nah, it doesn't work, and then fix it. And then once you got it the way you like it, then put the outer frame. But that would, of course, be visible, so you're either going to have to paint it, or you're going to have to stain it, or do something else to it. That's another solution to that problem. So he asks, lastly, why do we avoid using profanity on this podcast, since so many other podcasts don't? All right, so when we first started this podcast, it was basically Clint came to me and said, dude, people are doing podcasts and you would be great at doing a podcast. You've got the perfect face for it, which back then we weren't doing YouTube. So it really worked a lot better nowadays. I think maybe he would rethink that. But Clint is very religious, and he does not generally curse, and asked me not to curse.
Oh, okay.
And that is essentially what happened. I had a second podcast of my own called Our First Marriage. I don't think you can find the episodes of it anymore, though I have them all. Where my wife and I, and then later on my wife and I and her best friend and her husband her best friend's husband, all did a podcast together about marriage. And the first couple episodes, maybe the first episode of that, I cursed, and she wasn't comfortable with it and asked that we not curse. Okay. And I was like, you know what, that's fine, because this is going to be around for a long time and everything else. In real life, I have no problems with cursing. In fact, I do it quite enjoyably, to be honest with you. I'm very comfortable with the cursing. But, I think this just makes everything easier. There's really no reason for there to be profanity on a podcast like this.
Yeah.
We're informative. You can listen to us in the car, with your kids and stuff like that. And there's really no reason for it. I also think there's not a problem with cursing. I lived in Australia for 2.5 years where they played unedited Eminem songs all the time on the radio. And I'm like, wow, my kids are in the car. I think I should turn this channel. So, every culture is a little bit different, but it just makes my life, and I think Rob's life, a lot easier not to have to deal with that. And it makes your life as a listener easier.
Sure. I mean, I curse very little in regular life anyway. I do curse sometimes, but very little. So it's easy for me to not on the podcast because I don't much anyway. And just to be clear, Michael was actually saying he appreciates it because he's glad that he can just play this no matter who's around. Exactly. And he knows, right. Even if they're not interested in what we're talking about, there's not going to be anything terribly offensive. So,
right.
So easy.
Right. Yeah. So that's what it came down to. My first inclination when I started was to be more quote unquote real, but they're true to yourself or whatever. But the reality is, it was a good decision not to introduce.
Plus, you can come up with other adjectives for words. It's more creative.
Yeah, you should have seen what we're going to call McMash and Chris before we decided not to curse. Before that, it was going to be bad. That was not true. Paul, that was the first guy I could think of, McMash and Chris. It's the first guy I was like, who's got a name that we know?
He's a good-natured guy. I think he'll be all right with that.
He's a good-natured guy, that's right, with a really big house. Paul has a 7.2 set up in his 20 by 30 foot living room / kitchen. All of the speakers are from the Revel Performa 3 series, and he has dual SVS SB16 Ultra subs, both up front, placed next to the insides edges of his towers, so between his towers and where his TV is. And if you're on their YouTube and you're watching the final version of this, you will be seeing images, some of which are very dim, of his setup here, of Paul's setup. And you can see he's got a small TV with a clock above it, got 2 large speakers with the subs on the inside there, and the back of the room is open to the kitchen there. And it looks like there's a big walkway going probably into infinity rooms. So,
yep, open concept.
Open. I kind of like his cabinets though. Was kind of nice. Anyways, he wants to know if we think he should repurpose one pair of his speakers, either his surrounds or surround backs, to be Atmos speakers instead in a 5.2.2 configuration. And right now he's got 7. Is that right?
Yeah, he's right. He's got 7.2, and his AV receiver tops out at that.
Okay.
But he's like, I could change it to 5.2.2 by repurposing either the surrounds or the surround backs to become overhead speakers.
So his surrounds are the wedge-shaped bipole speakers mounted in elevated positions on the side walls, and his surround back speakers are currently high up, sitting on top of his kitchen cabinets, also way in the back of the room.
That's right.
His wife is barely okay with the speakers as it is, and she would absolutely veto mounting any speakers on the ceiling, so it's the way to make Atmos work in his setup. You already answered your question, sir. If you think that we have a death wish and would like to go up against your wife in this, the answer is no. We side with your wife, who is she's as beautiful as she is intelligent. And we will sell you right now that she is right. You should not have.
Not only that, you do have an Atmos setup. 7.1 is an Atmos compatible setup.
Yeah.
You can have object audio. It'll only be in the floor layer, but you can have object-based audio with a 7.1 setup. That is the minimum. You have to have at least 7 speakers to have an Atmos setup, but you have one. So don't feel too bad because what really his only option is front heights, isn't it? I mean, he can't put anything on the ceiling.
Yeah.
I guess you could rename your surround backs to rear heights, but what would that honestly get you? Right?
They are rear heights, honestly.
Pretty much. It really wouldn't gain you anything to do that. So I leave it as if your wife is tolerating what you have now, console yourself with the knowledge that you do have an Atmos setup.
I'm going to make a very controversial suggestion here, and that is to try it in a 5-point configuration.
Oh, just 5?
Those surround back speakers are so far away, and they're so high up, and I mean, if the wife is having an issue with the surround back speakers bothering her when she's in the kitchen and you're watching TV or something, I would venture to bet that your experience watching, your experience in sound with 5 speakers would not be significantly different than the 7 speakers. I might be wrong, but it might be worth the try.
It's fairly easy to try. Yeah, you're literally just telling your receiver, I have 5 instead of 7 now. You don't even have to disconnect anything, like physically.
And then live with that for a little while and just say, hey, honey, you know what? We're not even going to use these back 2 speakers. You know what? I'm going to wait, and and when we move, or at some time in the future, when one of our children finally gets out of this house, we'll move all these speakers into there, and I'll have a little home theater, and I'm gonna have speakers everywhere. You'll only have to go in there if you don't want to, and she's gonna love you. You're welcome. 2 speakers you won't even use anymore, maybe. So he says his surround back speakers are tilted down towards the seats, but his surround speakers are flush mounted on the side wall. Should he get swivel brackets so that he can aim his side surround speakers? Well, you shouldn't have really tilted down your surround speakers to begin with, though.
Tilting down the surround backs when they're way back there and up high, that's okay.
Since they are so far back, it's not that much of an issue, but generally speaking, you want the speakers just to be shooting straight out into the room. So especially the bipole speakers, the types that you have right here, I just leave them. I mean, they're meant to be in this configuration.
Oh yeah, no,
they're so far away anyways.
Yeah, the dipoles on the sides, just leave them as is. You don't need to adjust that at all. Those are completely fine where they are.
Yeah. So the one on the right looks like it's fairly close, but the one on the left looks like it's real far away from that couch. So, yeah.
A little bit of an illusion because there's the chair next to the couch for the right one, so it's extending the seating.
But the chair feels like it is the seat, though. Yeah, that is the seat for the TV.
Yeah,
it is directly in front of the
centered
TV.
On it, isn't it? Yeah.
So you're sitting right next to that right speaker and stuff. So yeah. I don't think I'd aim them. No, I don't think I'd.
Not dipoles. No point.
Christian started out with PC speakers plugged into his TV. That gave way to a sound bar, and then to a 5.1 Yamaha home theater in a box. Now, thanks to our device, he's upgraded to a Denon AVR X3300W with RBH Impression Series speakers all around. It's got Gen 1 bookshelves and the big center up front with the new Gen 2 bookshelf speakers that surrounds. And dual SVS PB1000 subs. He says it sounds
like AVRant recommendations already.
Yeah, I was going to say, dude. Did you get it from Accessories for Less? He says it sounds wonderful, and he can listen for hours without getting a headache like he used to with his old setups. I believe that to be true. We could take a moment and talk about that. One of the problems that a lot of people have expressed to me before they really get into home theater is like, I don't want more speakers. Listening to, watching TV right now, I could barely watch the whole movie without getting a headache. Like, well, there's your problem. Yeah. Now, Christian already started off above the curve because he started off with PC speakers plugged into his TV. I didn't start that way. I started with a TV that made sound.
Sure, yeah.
A Toshiba. I had a 32-inch. No, it must have been smaller. It must have been a 28-inch Toshiba that I thought was the absolute bomb. I got it from like Costco or something for like a couple $100, and I lived with that thing for a real long time. So I multiple speakers was not even on the radar, though I don't even think at that time they existed. But this idea of getting a headache from speakers comes from the distortion that happens when you're trying to listen. When you have to turn it up so you can hear it, and then the speaker starts to distort, and then you get a headache. Is kind of what happens there. So getting good speakers will actually reduce that, and you can listen louder for longer durations without getting a headache. All right, so on to his questions. He set Audyssey Dynamic EQ to on and Dynamic Volume to off, just as we suggested. It's good. Toggling between Dynamic EQ on versus off, he noticed the difference most while playing games. He says it's like a night and day difference. And what he notices most are the surround channels where they are much louder with dynamic EQ on. He found the background voices and crowd chatter in games like Assassin's Creed were basically just as loud as the main sounds coming out of his front speakers when dynamic EQ is on, versus those sounds being much quieter and less distracting with dynamic EQ off. Is it supposed to sound like that? What is dynamic EQ doing to the sound, and is it correct? Now, without knowing exactly what listening mode you're listening to when you go to the games, because I wonder if that's maybe making a bit of a difference. But my initial thought here was games mix many more sounds into a 360 arc for your head so that you can identify where you're getting shot from for the most part. And I think that they mix things a lot hotter than movies or anything else generally,
and more
will tend
discreetly
to do.
as well. It's not just like a ambient enveloping sound. It's like actual like pinpoint sounds in the surrounds. Exactly. So if in a movie there's like people, you're at a restaurant, there's people all around you talking and having dinner, we know that there's one conversation you're supposed to be listening to, and the camera is pointed at it. But in the video game, if there's multiple, or even if there's just one thing you're supposed to be paying attention to, but you turn away, that sound will then travel through those surrounds and everything else. And if there's more than one thing that you could be paying attention to at any given time, those things can be competing quite a bit. So I really blame the game, and I more than what dynamic EQ is doing. What all dynamic EQ should be doing is making all your speakers sound as flat as possible. Well, no, that's what Audyssey's doing. All dynamic EQ is doing should be making all the bass sound the same regardless of volume level. And it does affect the surround channels as well.
Sure.
So here's what I'll say, Christian. If you want to experience what the relative volume levels from channel to channel are supposed to sound like, simply turn your master volume up to 0 dB.
Right.
Because dynamic EQ has no effect when your master volume is at full reference volume, which you've run right. Audyssey, so full reference volume will be when the master volume dial is set to 0 dB. At that point, you can have dynamic EQ on or dynamic EQ off. It'll sound exactly the same. Dynamic EQ only takes effect when you turn the master volume dial down to below full reference volume, at which right. point what it attempts to do is keep all sounds audible. So where you tend to know, where we usually notice it the most is in the bass, because our human hearing is not linear. As soon as the bass gets a little bit quieter, to our perception, it seems much quieter versus other sounds. The mid-range and treble, you turn it down a little bit, it sounds to our ear like it only got a little bit quieter, but the bass can sound like it got a lot quieter. But it also affects the surround channels because we hear what's in front of us much better than what we hear is slightly behind us. Sure. So dynamic EQ says, okay, I know this sound is slightly behind the listener, so to keep it audible, I might have to boost that up when they've turned their master volume dial down. So you can do the experiment. Might be unpleasantly loud, but you're only doing this to get the experience to say, okay, this is what the sounds are relatively to each other supposed to sound like. This is how loud the surround channels are supposed to be versus right. the fronts at full reference volume. Then you can judge for yourself if dynamic EQ is boosting them too much. Nothing says you must keep it on at all times. Feel free to turn it off if it's unpleasant.
Yeah. And I would just make sure that when you're turning dynamic EQ off, that's the only thing you're turning off. You're not sure. turning off Audyssey as well, which I don't know how you could accidentally do that, but that's about the only other thing I can think of. Rob's absolutely right. At reference volume, everything should sound the same mm-hmm. regardless, or dynamic EQ should be doing nothing.
That's right.
So yeah. He says, with his room being open to the kitchen, dining area, and upstairs, he positioned his dual subs where they wouldn't block any walkways and set about the long and boring task of trying to take measurements and using trial and error to adjust the phase of one of his subs to get uniform bass. He decided to really just focus on his one primary seat, and he feels like he achieved good results. He sent his before and after measurements. Do he think he needs to adjust anything any further? So if you look at his measurements, which you cannot do here unless you are and listening to this in the future and watching us on YouTube, there will be some graphs on the screen. So he's got 1/48th octave smoothing. Holy moly.
Very little smoothing, so that's
Very
good.
little smoothing.
Because we're not seeing a ton of smoothing in here at all.
So he's got a big dip between, I cannot see
just
this,
a little
Rob.
above 60. Yeah.
So it's about 62. He's got a massive dip, but everything else looks pretty good. It just all got bigger. Did you do that?
I'm embiggening it for you.
You're embiggening it for you. I can't while I'm trying to do this thing. So if you take out this one big dip at around 62 hertz, and it goes from like 62 to almost 68 before it recovers fully. If you take out that one big dip, then for the most part, it's pretty flat. It's within 5 dB of itself, pretty much. Then
so that's what he had with dual subs, but no Audyssey applied, and only at his primary seat. But that's what he had.
So the second one is looks great, really, and this is
pretty darn flat.
Is this with Audyssey as well?
That is with Audyssey activated. Yes.
So this one, I'll tell you, the minimum dB measurement is about 894, and it goes up to 102. I would say at the highest. Yeah, 102. So we're talking like a 6 dB, 7
in total.
dB
So that would
swing.
be like plus or mince 3 dB.
I mean, that's kind of what you're shooting
we're aiming for.
Yeah, so yeah, this looks great, man. What you did is hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to sit there with the phase knob and click it over a little bit and take a measurement, and click it over a little bit and take a measurement. This looks great.
Yeah.
I would not do anything else. I would take the knob off or something. I would super glue it in place or something. I mean, I would don't mess with it. I would be terrified that something would happen. I would mess with it.
Yeah, I mean, what we don't know for sure is whether that he's getting that same response in his other seats.
I would doubt it, but yeah.
But maybe. Maybe with the two subs, you have a chance. But he's like, I kind of sit in this one seat all the time. It's pretty much the one I only care about. You got great results there, so.
Yeah, it looks really good. So he's wondering a bit about battery backup. He doesn't have a projector, but he does have a PC that holds all of his media. And the last time he had an unexpected blackout, his RAID setup took many hours to ensure that there was no corruption of his data. So he'd like to avoid having to go through that again. Looking at the various UPS backup options, though, there were an overwhelming number of choices and features. So what do we recommend to protect his computer and RAID setup without needlessly overspending? The answer here is almost certainly APC, and I'm sure Rob's got a specific model for you.
Yep.
But the real problem with doing this most of the time with home theater equipment is that there's lots of UPSs or uninterruptible power supplies for PCs.
Yes.
But they don't always work well with projectors and other things. There's lots more that work with PCs, and you're asking for a PC, so you're making this pretty easy on us. And I think there's going to be cheaper options than many of the home theater stuff that we start recommending. So this should be easy. Go, Rob, go.
Yeah, so I just get one of the regular back UPS units. Now, it does matter a little bit how long you want the battery to be able to operate. But what I'm concerned with is being able to shut things down properly. Or if a file is mid-transfer, being able to cancel it before the battery runs out and everything poops out and you might corrupt some data, right? So if you want the least expensive one that I can recommend to you, it would be the Back-UPS BE600 in APC's current lineup. You can find it for about $50, so it's certainly not overspending, 50, 55, somewhere in that range. Now, with your PC running, you'll likely only get about 5-6 minutes of battery runtime. That might be too short. So the unit that I like, which is a little bit more money, is about $80, is the Back-UPS BE850. And that'll get you probably about 12 minutes or so of battery time with your computer running. So if that sounds like it's worth another, $30, $35 to you, I would go for the 850, but otherwise the 600 might be enough. That's like, the 600 to me is like the minimum. That's like, I'm in the midst of watching something, oops, the power just went out. It gives me just enough time to safely shut everything down, but that's about it. If you want a little bit more wiggle room, you might pay more for the 850.
All right. He asks, where to next? This feels like the completion of his 5.1 surround sound setup. He nearly bought a 55-inch OLED to replace his 50-inch Panasonic Plasma, but decided to wait for prices to come down some more, since he's still happy with his Plasma's image. So what else can he tinker with or improve in the meantime?
There is this thing called enjoying your theater and enjoying the fruits of your labor, because you put a lot of work into this, Christian.
Yeah,
you really did.
Yeah. I am with Rob 100% on this. I'm like, I don't. There's, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is you haven't said anything about room treatments, so you could do some room treatments.
But I mean, big open space. How much is it really gonna?
Not a lot. And on top of that, the only other thing that comes to mind is home automation in some way. You know, even if it's just a Harmony remote that you can program it and have it control some lights or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's already got kind of the home theater PC set up. So, you know, like what I suggested to Byron when he asked this similar question was to, like, you know, maybe start backing up your discs and get your own Plex server and that. But he kind of already has that. Yeah. So, yeah, honestly, I mean, really, your display is the next obvious upgrade. So I would truly, I'm not saying this to be like flippant or anything, man. Enjoy what you've got until you're ready to upgrade your display, and then that'll be a really nice upgrade to your system.
Yeah. The other thing you can do is you can do what I like to do, and that is to just always have a list of gear that if you were to move into a new house on a lark, you're like, I have a new home theater and it's this size. This is what I'm going to have. I have a new home theater. It's this size. This is what I'm going to have. And that's just a fun thing to do.
Keeps you involved, keeps you up to date.
Yeah, and it keeps you reading about different equipment just A/B it and stuff like that in your mind. A/B, okay, well, the new subwoofer came out and it's got this and this, but what about that? What about that? And is it really better than the one I've already decided on? That sort of thing. That's fun. Don't spend any money. Yeah. I don't think you need to spend any money. I can't
see when you get itchy to spend money. That's when you're going to end up like buying an amp that is nice, but you really don't need. Yeah, you know, you already got the dual subs. You got nice speakers. It's appropriate for your listening distance. You really don't need an amp. Could you go crazy and try to do Atmos? I suppose, but yeah. Enjoy what you got. Keep up to date. Upgrade your display eventually.
Brett's Pioneer Kuro Plasma died. It won't power up anymore, but Brett isn't too sad about it because he's been waiting for it to give up the ghost so that he can buy an OLED.
Was there something nefarious that we don't know about Brett?
I think it was murder. It's been murdered. I think there's been foul play.
J'accuse Brett.
It's a backstabbed Kuro. There's a little toothpick in the back there that shorted everything out. All right. He asks, is the 2017 C7P the best model to get? It's significantly less expensive than the new 2018 models. Rob?
Yeah, if money is something of an object, so I thought
there wasn't much difference between the two of them. There wasn't like a ton.
Well,
right?
it's basically the same MSRP when they were brand new. But now one's the full year later, and they're phasing it out, so it's like $1,000 less, or sometimes a little bit more than $1,000 less to get the 2017. So yeah, you can confirm by reading basically any of the C8P reviews that are out there, and there's several of them out there now. You'll find some variance with some people saying that the minor upgrades that have been made in 2018 are a little bit worth more than some other reviewers, but everyone kind of agrees the 2017s are a really good value, and it's a small upgrade to the 2018s. Couple of little things that they improved, mainly due to the more powerful processor that's in the new C8P. But I for one, don't think it's worth an extra $1,000. Not at all. So if you got money to burn, sure, C8P is really nice. But the 2017s are a really attractive price right now. They won't be around forever. They will sell out. I have no doubt of that. So really the only question is which 2017 model? Because there was the B7A, there was the B7P, there was the C7P, and then the more expensive ones, the E and the G and the W7P. So that's kind of his second question.
I kind of hate all these stupid model numbers. It's like,
and it's kind of unnecessary. They all have the same picture quality. It's just the cosmetics. Yeah.
So he actually kind of likes the stylings of the B7A a bit more than the C7P. But will he miss having the internal Atmos decoding if he goes with the B7A?
Only if you use the TV's built-in speakers. That is the only place where the built-in Atmos decoding applies. Because
on the speakers themselves? On their own speakers?
TV's own built-in speakers. That is the only place.
Why would you want to have Atmos decoding on the TV speakers? That's literally the last place you would want to have it.
I have a B7P, so the B7P had the Atmos decoding built into it.
Yeah.
I've tried toggling it on and off. It does make an audible difference. It does sound different. It doesn't sound like actual Atmos.
How could it?
These are two speakers firing down from the very skinny case. You really can't make that sound like Atmos. So if you have an AV receiver, an Atmos AV receiver, and you're worried that if you're watching, say, Netflix from the built-in app, that you're not going to get Atmos because the B7A doesn't have Atmos decoding built into it, not to worry. It will send the Atmos, the Dolby Digital Plus Atmos bit stream out of the TV via HDMI ARC just fine. And if you plug, let's say, a Blu-ray player into your television, and then for some reason, so that won't work with ARC because it won't do the lossless. So the main thing is the built-in apps. Main thing is Netflix built in, right? He's worried that Netflix built in, he won't get Atmos from the built-in Netflix app. You will via HDMI ARC. It is only the built-in TV speakers that it applies to. So if you like the styling better and it's a bit cheaper, by all means get the B7A.
There you go. So anything we can suggest to help convince his wife that the 65-inch OLED isn't that big? He put tape on the wall to show the dimensions of a 55-inch versus a 65-inch. Anything else you could do? Ask for forgiveness and not permission.
I mean, I will say, since the bezel around it is so skinny, I mean, it's really skinny, the bezel around it. Honestly, so I have an older 55-inch LED backlit LCD TV.
You had a Kuro for a while, too.
I had a Kuro, which very sadly got destroyed in shipping.
Yes, that is true. What does the bezel look like on that? How big is the bezel?
On the Kuro?
Yeah.
Oh, that was like a good 1.5 inch thick bezel all the way around it.
Right.
The one on the OLED is razor thin.
Yeah.
So, honestly, the 65-inch, when it's turned off, really doesn't look much bigger than an older 55-inch with a thicker bezel around it. So, that. And then when you turn it on, you have a bigger image. So, the TV itself, really not much bigger. It's only the image.
There you go. And then just buy it anyways.
Yeah.
Jeff is trying to decide which projector to buy. He previously asked about possibly buying a used floor model Epson LS110,000 from a local store, or trying to stretch his maximum $4,500 budget to get a genuine 4K projector. But our advice was to wait till CD if he can, and he agrees that if it feels as though something significant in the $2,500 to $4,000 range is likely to be announced. But in the meantime, he still wants a projector. And he decided if he spends less than $1,000, he'll get good value because he could use it in his theater right now. When he gets a 4K HDR projector later, he can use the inexpensive projector for backyard and on-the-go situations, because there's so many of those.
He has plans.
I can see that. I'm not laughing at you, sir. I'm laughing at myself, because that sounds exactly like something I would say. I'm like, oh yeah, we're gonna use this, I guess, some way. I don't know. I have a motorcycle that I haven't ridden in 2 years, so let's just go with that. So he knows that the Epson Home Cinema 2150 is available for about the same price as the BenQ 2050 that we often recommend, and it's already $100 better because it's 2150 instead of 2050. So clearly it's a better projector. With their prices basically being equal, which one do we think is the better choice and why? I think I'm going to get a drink of water because my water's empty, and Rob's going to tell you all about it.
Sure. So I got two parts to this answer. So first of all, just going with the question as is, Epson Home Cinema 2150 versus the BenQ 2050. I'm going to say go with the BenQ 2050. On the performance side, it does actually have better contrast than the Home Cinema 2150. Whatever the specs might say, the BenQ 2050 has better contrast. So in your theater setup, you'll have a better contrast-looking image. How the other side of it is, when you said you might want to use this in the backyard, I think it's important to go with a DLP for that. The DLP light engine, so everything between the removable lamp, so that is removable, but everything between the lamp and the lens, that is all sealed. Air does not move in and out of that light path. On an LCD, like the Epson Home Cinema 2150, air moves through that light path, and you have the filter and all that stuff. So if you're taking that outdoors, I don't really advise that. definitely say go with a DLP for the sealed light path. Now, part 2 of this answer is you got a $4,500 budget. And if you look on Amazon right now, I hate to throw this wrench in there because this really might get him thinking, but the JVC projectors, even the 790. Okay, so the 790 is the really nice one that has the super deep black levels and the full DCI P3 color filter that goes into the light path and gives you the entire DCI P3 color. That's the X790. You can get it for right around $4,000 on Amazon right now. Its MSRP was $6,000, so that was above your budget, but you can find it right on Amazon for just a bit over $4,000. Not only that, you can find last year's X770, so the 770 became the 790 this year. Last year's X770, you can find that for like $3,500 on Amazon right now. And then the X590, which is the step-down model, MSRP on that one is $4,000, but you can find it for just a hair over $3,000 at Amazon right now. And what you're giving up there is it's not quite as black and the colors don't go quite as wide. But if your room isn't a total pitch black cave, might be a good choice. So kind of throws a wrench. You could consider getting one of the JVCs right now. You have the budget to do it. In fact, if you went like the X590, you could get that and the BenQ for $4,000.
We didn't need the BenQ though.
Just
went with that.
Well, if he wants it for the backyard. Yeah.
He's not going to put anything in his backyard. Come on. We all know that that's just a lie we tell ourselves to make the purchases we want to make. So the real question here is, what could possibly come out at CEDIA that would change what you just recommended?
The only thing would be like the X790 getting even cheaper.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is like if the 800 came out or something like that, or 799 or whatever.
Yeah, whatever the next number is. I don't know how they're going to number it. But yeah.
And then it came out, but he might be waiting for another couple of months after CEDIA, which is not happening until September anyways.
That's right.
So maybe it's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yay for making life.
Yay for spending $4,000. Woo. Woo. A lot of money.
John has a Klipsch SW450 10-inch sub that claims to play down to 28 hertz. Yeah. His theater area isn't that large, but it's open to his hallway and his kitchen, so he's dealing with around 5,000 cubic feet in total. He says he isn't feeling a punch from his sub. Well, if you're not sitting on it, you're not gonna. So he'd like to upgrade, but should he add a second sub to match his existing Klipsch, or does he need to get 2 all-new subs? You don't need to get 2 all-new subs, but that Klipsch ain't cutting it, Haas. That's not that thing's.
And if you got the one sub that is gonna perform in this size space, you might as well just not use the Klipsch that you have. This would be a replace situation, not an add to situation.
And I'll be honest with you, in a room this size and stuff like that, with the openings and everything else, it is sometimes okay to just start with one sub and then find out how that ends up working out for you.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to have to get something quite a bit larger if you want to pressurize, but you're never really going to pressurize. What you can do, though, is make the space that you're in more bassy.
Yeah. I mean, you could pressurize 5,000 cubic feet. That's totally doable.
It's not impossible, but
that's totally doable.
Hallway and kitchen, but where's that hallway lead?
That's true.
Do you want if those doors are not open, or are not closed, then do you want those doors to be flexing in and out as you pressurize your 5,000 cubic feet space? So chances are you probably don't really want to pressurize it, but you do want more bass. So it is a replace situation. That 10-inch Klipsch would have been fine in a small home theater. Corner loaded in a medium-sized theater would have been fine. But it is in 28 hertz is probably pretty optimistic. And we'd like to get you down to 20 hertz if we could.
Yeah, you need a sub that can genuinely play all by itself outside properly down to 20 hertz with the size of room that you have. So like a great value choice would be HSU's VTF-3 Mark V. That'd be a terrific choice in here. It's big. I mean, especially compared to the sub you got right now. Make sure you realize what kind of size you're dealing with, but that would be an optimal price to performance choice right there.
Right. I mean, if you're looking for floor space too, you can always look at some of the SVS subs, the cylinder subs.
I mean, ideally you would kind of go for a plus, a PC12-Plus in here, but that's
kind
of expensive.
Sure. It is going to be a lot more expensive. So, I mean, but I think in this case, what you really need to to look at here is you want to get something that gets down to 20 hertz and it has enough output for you to really notice it. Now, I don't know that you're ever going to get to the, that I have so much bass it's making me sick to my stomach in this room. Not without adding a ridiculous amount of subwooferage in here. So, like I said, I don't necessarily think you want to get to that. You want to actually pressurize that much anyways. But we can get you much closer to having a very enjoyable lower end to your system. So he says he's got 5 speakers set up with a Denon AVR X2200W. He'd like to mount a pair of outdoor speakers as his Zone 2. So first up, does he need an external amp? 2200 5-speaker setup. Seems like he shouldn't, but that's a guess.
You could reassign the, so it'd be like surround back / height binding posts. Because you do have 7 pairs of binding posts on the 2200, and you can reassign what's labeled as the surround backs to be your Zone 2. So you don't need an external amp. You could do this since you're running 5.1 in your theater. You can use the remaining 2 channels as your Zone 2. You could do that.
Yeah. And second, he knows we've recommended Yamaha outdoor speakers in the past, but he wants a pair. He wants a pair for around $250 that come with a swivel mount. He has to mount them farther apart than he ideally likes, so he wants to be able to aim them. What do we suggest? So for $250, he wants the speaker and the mount. Is that what I'm understanding? Or
that's
the
right.
speakers have to come with the mount?
$250 all in for a pair that he can aim.
Because the Yamahas aren't, and they are around 200. They're usually around $200, right?
The Yamahas do have a movable mount, but it's only in one direction, right? So it's like up and down or side to side, not both.
Right. They're not swivel. I don't know. What you got?
RBH.
RBH makes outdoor speakers?
RBH has outdoor speakers. They're AO 520s.
I think I knew this.
They're right around that price point. Now, it's not a full pivot bracket like the Birds or something like that, but essentially if you mount them at a slight cockeyed, right? Then you can get whatever angle you want.
This is the same mount that the Yamahas have, though, isn't it? It's very similar to this.
As the smaller Yamahas, yes.
Yeah.
So half a dozen of one, 6 of the other. But he wanted an alternate suggestion.
There's an alternate. All right, there you go.
Yeah.
So he wants to have a second TV out on his deck for watching sports. He wants to use his receiver's second HDMI output so that his 1080p Sony TV inside and the new TV outside are both showing the same thing. 4K is not a concern at this time. I don't care if it's a concern. That's what you're buying. He needs a 50-foot HDMI cable, and he wants to feed an outdoor wall plate so that he can quickly plug and unplug the outdoor TV at any time. Does he need anything special as far as the HDMI cable goes, or can he keep it cheap? There is no such thing as a cheap 50-foot HDMI cable.
$30 is pretty cheap, and there are high speed rated, so that's the 10.2 gigabits, not 18, but the 10.2 gigabits, $30, 50 feet from Monoprice, and it is CL2 rated, so you can run it inside a wall.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you really aren't,
that's as cheap as it's going to get. Yeah.
Oh, if you're gonna if $30 is gonna nix this, then there is no other option. But yeah, Monoprice does have a 50-foot CL2 rated in-wall HDMI cable. It is 10.2 gigabits per second. If you're topping out at 1080p, that'll be just fine. And yeah, I would run it in a conduit. So if you ever need to replace it, you can.
I got to be honest with you, man. I just run the good 50-foot fiber optic stuff. If we have 50 feet, don't we know the red mirror or whatever it is? Is that what it is?
Well, the red mirror is the active. That's the
active. Oh yeah, that's
active HDMI. The fiber optic is more expensive for sure.
I know, but if you're gonna run this, if you're running it in conduit, first of all, you may not even have that option. This sounds like an existing setup. You're not going to be opening up walls to put conduit in there.
Yeah, right.
So you got to really think to yourself: is it going to be worth running this cable into my, through my wall to get 1080p on this outside? For sure, because you may find that that's not what you really want long term, and therefore spending a little bit extra money to get the full rated cable.
The fiber optic would be the safest. That's as far as future proofing.
That's kind of what I would do. I gotta say, and the wall plate and stuff like that. Yeah, you have to spend more. The wall plate's not a problem. The wall plates come with usually an L bracket, but not always. And you just plug it straight in, and it's good to go.
I would say if it's going to be exposed to the outside, you want to have a proper weather cover that goes over it, just like you would an electrical outlet.
Sure.
But that's just the case that gets attached outside. So
yeah. Other than that, Infinite Gary. In general, Gary's a fan of Parasound. Yes, we are aware. But he called BS on their marketing claims of the Halo CD1 CD player that they released for $4,500 back in 2013. Part of the press release reads, the full potential of the 16-bit CD format is realized for the first time in the CD1. Yeah, that doesn't sound at all like BS, Gary. I don't think that's a good call on your part, buddy. So how did it take until 2013 for that to be the case? Okay, according to that same press release, it is because the Halo CD1 uses this amazing thing called a CD-ROM drive to read a lot of the data off the CD ahead of time. Oh my goodness, ahead of time.
A buffer.
So that it's Linux operating system and Intel processor, they bumped up to Intel, can apply more error correction than a regular CD player. This is nonsense, right? No. It's the same thing that every other stupid CD player does with a buffer.
Not for $4,500.
It's like, hey, our car, for the first time, realizes the full potential of having 4 wheels on the ground. Our tires have treads, which set them light years apart from other treadless tired cars out on the road today, which would be true if it were a thing. Yeah, this is just, it's not nonsense. It's not, and many times these marketing claims aren't nonsense. They are just fantastical statements of obvious things that
I don't know who's buying this. That's nutty.
No, anyways. So some more commentary from Gary on PS Audio's YouTube videos. I'm sorry. This time it's a video from Paul McGowan's son Scott, detailing how he had a 20 amp electrical circuit installed in his room to add some additional headroom. To the electricity? Aside from the claim itself, what Gary couldn't understand is why there'd be any focus on the gear and the electrical circuit powering it when the room sounds so reverberant. You can instantly hear Scott's awful room acoustics as soon as he starts talking, so what's the point of worrying about the 20 amp circuit? Because, dude, these people don't.
When you sell amps that are as expensive as PS Audio's, you want to claim that nothing else matters. Speakers don't matter. The wires matter. They have to matter, right? The wires have to matter.
The wires have to matter.
Speakers don't matter. The room doesn't matter. Where you're sitting relative to it. And it's all the electricity. That's what matters, because that's the thing we sell, and it's super expensive.
I gotta believe that these guys somehow have some sort of internal kickback mechanism going on, where they're like, if we recommend transparent cables, then transparent cables like gives us a little bump or something. I honestly don't know how these guys make any money whatsoever. I mean, PS Audio in particular, I really like the looks of their gear. Their gear looks really, really nice, but everything that comes out of their mouth, you're just like, what?
But you're absolutely right, Gary. Like you do want to focus on what is the thing that is limiting the fidelity of your system, and for sure, the room acoustics are limiting Scott's setup. It's like a hard brick surface, hardwood floor. There's nothing absorptive anywhere around, and his voice is just echoing like crazy right in the video there. That is one of the things you can actually discern on YouTube. Yeah.
But I've heard of listening rooms at major manufacturers that are exactly like this, and this is where they bring people in, and it's like glass. It's a beautiful room, all wood and glass, and and windows and stuff, and in this beautiful setting, and people are like, it's a beautiful place to, and you can really enjoy them. Like, listen, that room's hot garbage, and you can't hear anything that's going on with these speakers because all you're hearing is the room, but that's not the experience people are having because they're already there with their mindset. I'm impressed. And look how impressive all this stuff is.
Hear how full this room sounds.
I mean, a perfect example is at Bang & Olufsen. When we went to Bang & Olufsen,
we shouldn't delete it. We got 24 questions on this list. So we shouldn't make it.
When I went to Bang, we're on number 8. Went to Bang & Olufsen. They had all these listening rooms that were really precisely set up, and some of them were set up to be like real rooms. Like they had some absorption stuff around, but it was like furniture and carpets and stuff like that. But other ones were real test listening rooms, right? And it was a very neat thing that they did in order to do that. But like for dinner one night, we went to like the Bang & Olufsen family house, and it was crazy. It was like this farmhouse in the middle of farmland, and these two, I don't even remember the story behind it, but there's like these super modern speakers everywhere in this like ancient farmhouse with nothing is set up to be optimally. There's no theater room. There's nothing like that. I'm like, this is just so bizarre, and that's sort of what he's describing here. These new Samsung Cinema LED screens that are looking to replace projectors in cinemas, they're basically going to look like enormous OLEDs, even though Gary uses OLED TVs and just bought a new Sony A8F. I cannot say this stupid one. He still vastly prefers to watch movies on this projection setup and finds that OLEDs look too bright and rather artificial looking. But are cinemas eventually just going to look like massive flat panels? We are a long way away from that happening, I believe, Gary. I got to be honest with you.
It's going to be a hot minute. Yeah, these are expensive displays.
Well, and that's what it comes down to. I mean, movie theaters are not exactly rolling in the dough right now, no matter how often Marvel puts out a stupid movie.
They're kind of hoping that this kind of new technology might draw people in.
I don't think they've got the new technology yet to draw people in, but we will see. We will see. But these are far too expensive when you can just spend, a tenth of it and buy a new projector or a new bulb for the current projector that you have.
But I do think this is going to look more similar to a gigantic. I mean, these things can hit 500 nits. That's way brighter than any projection setup.
That's true. But I mean, one of the things that bothers me too is the projector setup. I mean, you can still sit awfully close to these things, and for me it's real uncomfortable. People seem to like it because they sit there all the stupid time. But I don't think you're going to be able to do that on a setup like this.
Yeah, even 4K resolution when it's a 35-foot wide screen.
You're going to have to remove some of those front rows. And you watch those guys say, I'm not I don't remove seats. I don't remove seats. You've lost your mind. That's not how we make money around here, by removing seats. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But it's not happening anytime soon. Bobby is using an older Pioneer VSX 816 receiver. He lost the setup microphone some time ago, so all of his speaker settings need to be done manually. He's using a pair of Polk PSW10 subwoofers in his enclosed 12x12 room. He put them both up front due to placement constraints, but thankfully he's getting pretty darn even bass across all four seats. Possible. Yeah. What's the best way for him to make sure he's getting all of his subwoofer and AV receiver manual settings, speaker settings correct? How should he set the crossover and trim levels settings in his receiver, and how should he set the knobs on the backs of his subs? All right. So we can see the back of his sub plate here if you're looking at the YouTube video. If not, it has the normal stuff. It has a volume knob, a low pass filter knob, and hertz that goes from something to something. I don't know what it is. It's like 80 to 160. He's got an auto on or off. I guess I don't know what that is. Anyways, and a 0 to 180 phase knob.
Not a knob, just a toggle switch. 0 degrees or 180 degrees.
Yeah, sorry,
it's a polarity switch. Yeah.
Polarity switch, right. So, first things first, you want to set your low pass filter to as high as it will go.
Correct.
All the way up. Then you're going to have to get an SPL meter. And yes, there are some for your phones, and yes, they are garbage, but hey, if that's what you got.
It's actually kind of good enough for this purpose, yep.
So then you're going to play test tones through all of your speakers.
Which you can just go into your Pioneer, and there will be a speaker level settings menu, and it will play one at a time test tones out of your speakers. Do set your master volume to 0 dB before you begin those test tones. Because on most receivers, the master volume does affect the internal test tones, how loud they are. And it is supposed to read 75 decibels on your SPL meter. That is C-weighted with slow response.
Yep.
That test tone is supposed to read 75 decibels when the master volume is at 0 dB. So what you can do is just set the trim level to its default. It should have a
zero,
plus or minus range. It should go from like negative 12 to plus 12 or negative 16 to plus 16 or something. Set it at 0, right in the middle. Set the master volume to 0, and then you can adjust the volume on the back of your sub until your SPL meter reads 75 dB.
That's right, or pretty close to it, and then you can kind of adjust it with the trim level of the whatever. Then once you've got all these set to, and then your phase knob, your phase switch.
If you've already got fairly even bass, leave those alone. Wherever they are right now,
whatever that set is fine. Yeah. And then So use a volume knob on your subwoofers to get it close to 75, and use a trim to get it to dial it in. And that's pretty much it.
That's your trim levels, crossover.
The crossover knob on your subwoofer should be set as high as possible.
That's right.
And then you're going to cross over all your speakers at 80 hertz or ish.
Honestly, just start at 80 hertz. Then if you want to play a sweep through your front left and right channels so that it's coming through your speakers and your sub. And if you notice there's like, your speakers are going down in the sweep and they start to get quieter before the sub comes in, then you can raise the crossover frequency to 90 or 100 hertz or something like that. So you just want them to blend nicely without there being a gap in between where your speakers roll off and your subwoofer starts playing.
These questions must be real short, dude. The rest of these questions, because we're 2/3 of the way through this thing. He has carpet over an insulated subfloor. Does he still need to decouple his subwoofers from his floor? Well, you can answer that question real simply. Put on something that has deep bass, or just play a bass sweep. Is stuff rattling in your room? And then play it again, but this time put your subwoofer on top of a folded up, comforter or something.
Yeah.
And then see if it sounds any different. If it sounds the same, then the answer is no. If it sounds different, then the answer is yes. And don't just stay in this room while you do it. Like, leave the room and close the door.
And it is entirely possible, because this sub is not super heavy.
Yeah.
So it's entirely possible that if you've got carpet with an underpad, already under it, that it might be totally fine.
Yeah. So he's planning on getting dual SVS PB1000 subs, but they will be too much for us. Will they be too much for a small room? I don't know why I can't read tonight. He isn't getting the full tactile bass that he would like from his current subs. No, they won't be too much for your current room.
No.
I mean, there's also, first of all, any sub can go in. Any big, you can always buy too much sub. You just have to turn it down. But in this case, your room is nice and small, and these subs will just straight up destroy it.
Do be aware, the PB1000s are much bigger physically than your current
Could he
subs.
go with the SB1000s in this room? That's the real question. It's 12 by 12
and enclosed,
probably 8 enclosed. I think he can.
I think you could.
And that would get you a much smaller footprint.
Much smaller.
Now, you may not be comfortable with that, in which case...
I mean, if you're like, I really want to feel it and really want to pressurize this room, stick with the PB1000s. Just be aware of their physical size. Their
physical size is significantly larger than you think it's going to be.
Build a cardboard model.
Build a cardboard model box. That's right. Nick has a Roku 3, but whenever the streaming audio is Dolby Digital Plus, he gets some strange noises. So he mostly uses his older Apple TV, but after the most recent updates, it's getting sluggish and sometimes crashes out of apps. So he's looking for a new streaming box, but whatever he gets, he'd like it to offer all the latest formats. HDR10, Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos, etc. NVIDIA Shield sounds pretty good, but it doesn't do Dolby Vision. The newest Apple TV 4K does Dolby Vision, but seemingly not all streaming services, and it doesn't do Atmos. Roku Ultra doesn't do Dolby Vision. Chromecast Ultra does Dolby Vision, but not Atmos. Does he need to buy multiple streaming devices to get a compatibility with all the newest stuff, or can we offer a rundown of the available devices and let him know which one would be the best for him to get? Now, the question here, first of all, you've recapped it better than I could have. I'll put it to you that way. And I have a feeling Rob is like, yeah, that's pretty good. So, the reality here is everybody is waiting on everybody else, sort of thing. So my suggestion would be, first of all, price point. What's your price point that you want to hit? Because you suggested the NVIDIA Shield. And honestly, out of all the boxes, NVIDIA Shield is, in my opinion, most likely to get everything first. Not every individual thing first, but most likely to get like the full suite of everything. It'll be the first thing that can do all of it. But no, I don't know when. I mean, the Apple 4K is like right on the cusp of being there, but it's Apple, and they may never add anything to it, and you can do nothing to make them do it. I mean, they're trying to convince people they invented face unlocking. Have you seen the commercials?
Yep.
We invented face unlocking. I'm like, no, you didn't. I had that on my Samsung Galaxy Nexus like 10 years ago. Shut up.
Their version of it, yeah.
Whatever.
No, the short answer, Nick, is there is no single streaming box that does all the formats for all the services. There simply is not one. at this time. Strangely, Netflix is probably the biggest streaming service that almost everyone has. If you want both Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos from Netflix, the biggest service, the only way to do that is to use the built-in app on an LG OLED. I mean, how ridiculous is that, right? Yeah. You can get Atmos from an Xbox, but the Xbox doesn't do Dolby Vision. You can get Dolby Vision from the Apple TV 4K, but it doesn't do Atmos. So the only way to get both of them is from the built-in app of an LG OLED. But the LG OLED doesn't have built-in apps for every service because it's WebOS. And not everybody has written apps for WebOS that do all the things. So the short answer is there's no single box I can point you to. And it does depend on which services. So, for example, Roku has the most services available, just bar none. But they don't have Dolby Vision on any of their boxes right now. And most of their services don't stream Atmos either. And that's not the hardware's fault. The hardware can do it. That's the software's fault. So almost everybody releases their app, but they don't necessarily support all the latest things. So here's my hopeful answer. Because the box that has all the apps, that does the Dolby Vision, and the only thing it's missing is the Atmos, is the Apple TV 4K.
Right.
Apple has said they're working on getting bitstream output working, and once that happens, Atmos will come along. And since it's Apple and it's the Apple TV, almost everybody is going to hop and update their software for that thing. So that's kind of the one I'm the most hopeful for. Second best, probably the NVIDIA Shield. You're not going to have Dolby Vision on that. That's not the end of the world because you do still get HDR10. But even there, it's Android TV, and not everybody is updating their apps super fast on Android TV because they'd rather update their Android version, not their Android TV version. So it's tough. There's no super simple answer to give you here. But if I were a betting man, I would get an Apple TV 4K. I would live with the non-Atmos for the time being. They said they were going to do it. I don't know if they actually will.
See, I've gotten burned too many times from these big companies.
I know.
I'm looking at you, Microsoft. And I just don't trust it. That's why I think the NVIDIA Shield is the better bet. But
if you're doing Plex, get the Shield because that is the best Plex device. Yeah.
Nathan says, we don't see a lot of Panasonic AV products in North America anymore, but one of their newest Ultra HD Blu-ray players, the UB820, will be available in July for $500. Mm-hmm. Notably, it's one of the few players that will support both HDR10 and Dolby Vision.
Oh, HDR10 Plus.
Plus. Sorry, look, I made the same mistake the other guys did. And Dolby Vision, and they specifically talk about its ability to make manual adjustments to the HDR output, including HDR to SDR conversion. So is this the heir apparent to the Oppo 203?
Other than being able to play DVD audio discs... So I'm not sure if it plays SACDs. It does play DSD files, which is the format that is stored on SACDs, but I don't know if it actually reads SACD discs. They do have another player that they've announced, the UB9000, which is that is very much, the UB9000 is very much the heir apparent to the 205. Because it's got all the upgraded audio file, super high-end DACs and the crazy gold-plated audio outputs and all that kind of stuff. And it reads every disc format available. So that very much. But there's been no announcement for North America for the release of the UB9000. If you can't get an Oppo 203, if you're using a projector and you'd really like to be able to adjust the HDR output or maybe convert it down to SDR with full adjustment, this is going to be probably what I'm pointing people to.
We'll have to wait to see when it comes out.
How we will. But, Panasonic's previous players, which we couldn't really get here very easily, it was mostly in Europe and Asia, they were right up there neck and neck with the Oppos. So,
Aidan. Last week, we talked about Aidan wanting to position his dual subwoofers at the midpoints of his two side walls, but we described how putting them exactly at the midpoints would block his closet door. Turns out we somehow got our signals crossed, and the situation in question are different from what we described last week. This happens. Mm-hmm. It's okay. We will answer your actual question. Your other question probably helps somebody else out.
Yeah.
Which obviously wasn't your actual question, but whatever, it doesn't matter. His gear closet is actually near the back of the room. Putting the subs at the midpoints of the side walls won't block any closet doors at all. What concerned him is that he has his AC duct inside of his closet. So if he leaves a closet door open, he wants to know if he still has a sealed rectangular room so that the mid-wall placements will work perfectly, and if opening the closet door means no more sealed rectangle, will closing the closet door be okay, or will it get too hot in there? Probably get too hot in there if there's no way for the air to return through. That's right. Honestly, I've got ducts in my openings in my rooms, and I can still consider it a rectangular room with midpoint placement. So this is not enough of a, to me, this is not opening the door to the closet is fine.
Overall, yes, I completely agree. Yeah, every room is going to have, well, not every room. I suppose you could make a completely sealed room, but for ventilation purposes alone, so that you do not suffocate if you close the thing up, there's going to be some opening. So the easiest way to think about the whole air pressure inside of a room thing is just imagine it's water instead of air, right? If you completely fill up the room with water, it's going to escape out the vent, but not as quickly as if you had your entire, door completely open to your hallway. Then the water's going to easily rush out versus coming out of a small opening somewhere in the room.
I think what he's really worried about, though, is how the opening of the closets transforms the shape of the room from a rectangle into something else.
It can. You can measure an impact. It does exist.
In fact, if you look, and this is a million years ago, but it may not still be on the website, but on Audioholics, when the SMS-1 first came out, which is the Velodyne system, Clint had a room, and this was when he lived in South Carolina, so it's a long time ago. But he had a room, in the back of his room, he had two closets, and they were like the accordion doors or whatever, but two big closets back there. And he was taking measurements with the SMS-1, and for those of you that don't know, what it was you set up some microphones, you hook this device up to your receiver, it set test tones through, not test tones, but sweeps through, and measured it with the microphone, and you could see the real-time graph as it was measuring. Well, he opened his closet doors, and the measurement changed significantly. So your question is that opening that door going to make a significant difference in the sound in my room? And the answer is maybe. But the midpoints of your side of your walls is probably still the right placement for your subs. And Audyssey probably will be able to do whatever it needs to do with the signal in order to make it sound darn good at your seats, is my guess. Unless your closet is like 7 feet deep.
Yeah.
And, you know what I mean?
No, but more than that, I think the decision is made for you. I wouldn't trap that air. If this is your AC you're coming into your room anyway, you need that air coming in to cool you as much as the gear. So if you want to have the appearance of a closed door, you could put a louvered door in, so at least the air can move through. But acoustically, that isn't going to really be a closed door. But the decision is made for you. You need that air to be able to get out of that closet. It's not a closed loop in there.
The reality is once you take your measurements with Audyssey, that's the way your room should be when you're doing your critical listening or your whatever your listening is. If that door is open, then when you do the measurements, that's what the door should always be open. You can do what I do. I just took the doors off.
Yep.
So, I wouldn't overthink this one. Travis says he's been listening on and off to AVRant for a few years. I think that's how people should listen to this podcast. It's too long. And he's curious about us, Tom and Rob. Could we share some of our backstory, education? What do we do outside of AVRant? How do we get into podcasting? How do we gain our knowledge about home theater? I've talked about this a couple times before, but I'll do a quick recap. The very first time I came across home theater was when I lived in San Francisco. I was in college. It was right when Jurassic Park came out on VHS. I had watched it at my house on my apartment. Of course, I always bought the letterbox because I cared about video and sound. I just didn't know that home theater was a thing, and some friends of mine that lived in the same apartment complex came by for one reason or another, and they're like, "Oh, you got the new Jurassic Park?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got it. Just watched it. It's good. And not the good new one. It's the only one. You got Jurassic Park." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Why don't you bring it over, watch it at our house?" I'm like, "I just watched it." He goes, "No, you got to come watch it at our house." And they were all working at It wasn't Best Buy. I think it was called the Good Guys. It may have been. There may have been another store that it was a competitor to Best Buy in California at the time. It wasn't Fry's, but it was something like that. And they all were really into this stuff. And I went over there, and my mind was absolutely blown. Now, first of all, it was in the middle of the night, and they were playing this movie entirely too loud. But their neighbors were, I want to say, illegal aliens, and therefore would not complain about them, because that's the only explanation I could get. Once they changed apartments, they were never able to be loud again after that. But like these guys had the very first THX certified receiver that ever hit the market. It was like $1,700 or maybe more than that. I thought it may have been Onkyo, but I don't remember. And every one of them had a receiver. There was 3 guys living in this apartment. All of them had a receiver. It's, they just kind of pulled and stuff like that. And it was at that time I caught the bug. Now, how did I get into audio? I was working for the school district in their research department up in Jacksonville. And if you've ever worked for the government, you know that there's not a lot of work gets done around there. So I had lots of time to spend on forums, and I started posting on the forums on Audioholics, and slowly worked myself into a job working for them, where I worked for them about 8 years writing news, reviews, editorials, that sort of thing. It was at that time the podcast got started in the way that I talked about earlier. And Rob was a listener to the podcast, and
That's
Rob,
right.
you can pick it up there.
Yeah. My education, I'm a university dropout. Took 2 years, never completed. Outside of AVRant, I like to maintain some privacy about the rest of my life. But since Tom just mentioned it, I will say my job is government funded. And so getting into...
So that means he's got lots of time to spend on forums too.
Not so much, but I did spend a lot of time on forums. I mean, mainly I got into home theater right at the tail end of high school. And basically it was just, I got frustrated by not getting the good information. I got frustrated by how much things I bought and money I spent, and ultimately wished I had made different decisions. So I just I've never gone away from it. I never lapsed. So I've just kept up with it. It's just been a continual interest for me. And that's really, I have good memory and recall for this type of stuff for whatever reason. It's a facet of my brain that seems to work, so it goes nicely. That works well. That's really all it is. There was no magic to gathering any knowledge about it. It's just a lot of time and remembering a lot of stuff over many, many years. And yeah, I started listening to podcasts quite early on. Picked up the HT guys. They were one of the earliest ones. Found them via AVS Forum, which I was frequenting at the time. And then just looked for other home theater podcasts. Found AVRant. Got in touch with Tom and Dina early on, mostly to correct their grammar, thus getting the nickname Grammar Rob.
Yes, and, that's right. He was very annoying back then, and he annoyed me right into
being a guest host as soon as Dina left one summer.
That's right. I was distraught when Dina left. I was crushed, but I was seriously in a bad way, man. It was pretty bad. I was very close to disbanding the podcast at that point. Yeah. I'm glad I didn't, but it's like I don't have any special education when it comes to audio. I have a background in psychology. I have a master's in psychology, but that's mostly just to mess with my kids, I think, and. But I got a lot of just hands-on experience, and what it comes down to is Rob's got a really good attention to detail and recall of all the specifics and stuff like that. My background, my experience with speakers and TVs and doing measurements and stuff like that is all hands-on. And I took the THX. Didn't quite get the certification, but I took the THX class for calibrating displays, so I know. Firsthand how that works. While I'm not nearly as good as some of our listeners, like what's his name? It just fell on my head. Some of our listeners who are professional calibrators, I do have enough knowledge to be dangerous.
Oh, like Ray?
Ray, that's it. It fell on my face. Wow, that was just weird. So I bring more practical knowledge to the podcast. Plus, Rob really likes digging into the details, and I feel like if
I read manuals. You want to know how I learned about audio stuff? I read manuals.
I feel like if I started like bringing too much of that to the podcast, now that I don't have to anymore because I don't have my podcast partner used to be the uninitiated one. It works better if I just come here and just bring a little more color commentary and let Rob rattle off all the details. I think it works for the dynamic. But I certainly have been in the position in the past where I've had to be the one who's more knowledgeable of stuff. That being said, I don't think there's been ever a time on this podcast at any point in its history where I've gotten the math right about dB stuff. I always get that all messed up in my head when I'm doing. I know, it messes me up. So anyways, let's go on. Chris, how much time do we have? 2 minutes.
Well, we started late, so
I don't care about that.
Maybe push it to 10.
No, we'll see about that. Chris wants a new TV for his living room, and he's been thinking about upgrading to 4K. But in his dedicated theater, he's got 3D, and he really enjoys it. You and Rob both.
That's right.
So is there any option for a 4K 3D TV these days?
Really expensive ones, yep.
I was going to say that. I think the only one I ever remember, isn't it an OLED that does 3D or something?
Well, you'd have to go back to 2016.
Yeah.
And they're getting very hard to find. You could look for an E6 or a G6. Those did have passive 3D. You could go for a C6, although that has the stupid curve on it. That was the last curved OLED that they ever made.
So bad.
So E6 or G6, and they are not cheap these days, but they did have passive 3D. If you want 3D, it's really, really good, and it is an OLED. It does have Dolby Vision. The brightness wasn't great. It was about 450 nits, so they got much brighter the following year. So you're giving up something in the HDR to maintain 3D. If you want a current model TV that's still available, you're looking at the Sony Z9D series. That does have active 3D with the shutter glasses. You do get crosstalk, so it's not fantastic 3D, and boy, is that an expensive TV. And it is from 2016. They've just maintained it.
Those glasses are probably $200 a piece,
not
too,
quite,
right?
but they do have the batteries they have to recharge and all that. So, them's your options. It's slim pickings, and they're expensive, and they're old.
If 3D is a no-go, should he snap up a 55-inch TLC P605 on clearance, or would one of the newer models be better bang for his buck, even though it would cost a bit more?
I mean, if that's the size you want, they're $500 right now. 55 inches of the P series from last year from TCL.
Yeah,
they're $500. I mean, that's if 55 inches is the size you want, it's pretty good.
I would be okay with that.
Yeah.
Since he recently bought a Denon X4300H and 4 Atmos speakers, he wired things up in his theater for 5.1.4, but he already had a 7.1 set up, so he would like to get his surround back speakers working again for a full 7.1.4 configuration. So he needs at least 2 channels of external amplification. What 2-channel amp should he buy, and which speakers should he offload from his receiver to his new 2-channel amp? Well, let me tell you, sir, you're not going to have as many options as you think.
That's right.
For 2 channels, you can either do your top middles or your fronts, I think.
You can do your front, left, right. That's one of the options. Or, I think I
think it's top middles.
It would be like your top rears, middles. Right? Whatever your overhead speakers that are towards the back of the room, whatever the name that is. So it could be rear heights, top rears, or top middles. But yeah. That's kind of
so. If you decide that you want to do your top, your front left and right speakers, then you can maybe buy a beefier, nicer amp, maybe one of the Emotiva ones, the BasX, or one of those things, or something like that.
That'd be a good choice, like the A300. It's a nice choice for a good 2-channel amp that would really power your front, left, right speakers really nicely.
Now, if you're going to let your receiver do all of that, and then just do the top middles or top rears or whatever the heck it is that you end up with back there, you can get like the Audio Source one. Is that what it's called? The Audio Source?
Oh yeah, the Audio Source AMP100, which is like $100, 50 watts a channel, but that's totally fine if all it's powering is your top rears.
That's what I did in my system. So that lets you know, because I went down the rabbit hole.
Because if you want to go down the rabbit hole, you can look at a Monoprice Monolith. You know, they actually have their 7-channel model in stock right now, $1,600. It's only a
That's where I ended up at. I was like,
jump in price from $100.
Let me give this amp a try here right there. I'm like, Rob's like, which one should I was like, Rob, which one should I get? He goes, oh, get the Audio Source, for 2 channels. I'm like, okay. I'm like, but I can only spend like $100 more, and I can end up with a 2-channel amp for my front speakers instead. Like, oh yeah, but for just like another couple $100, you can get 5 channels.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you're gonna get a 5-channel, you don't want this wussy little 5-channel. Let's get a good monolith one. I'm like, wait a second, $1,600. What am I thinking? So yeah, I ended up with the $100 amp. We'll do one more and then we'll.
Yeah, I'd really like to answer David's for him. So
David has a dedicated theater with a 150-inch Seymour AV screen and a JVC X770 projector. He loves the image, but it has a fatal flaw that is nearly killing his marriage. It is so slow whenever there is an HDMI change that his wife wants him to get rid of the JVC. Why isn't there more warning about this? Is that the question? Because there's no that was the A. There's no A.
That's the first part. Well, so it is mentioned in a number of reviews that it has very slow HDMI switching. They might not stress it enough that you super duper picked up on it. I've mentioned it in passing a few times that it does have very slow HDMI input switching.
Is it possible does it have an Insta preview that you could maybe use
It's just what it is.
There's no getting around it.
There's not. Every time there's a HDMI handshake, it's like 30 seconds of blackness.
30 seconds?
Yeah.
Shut up.
No, seriously, it's really slow. I can see why your wife is annoyed, especially coming up to the second part here.
What about if he got a video processor?
Well, that's his second question.
All right. Well, I didn't read it yet. The biggest problem is their DirecTV box. It outputs 720p or 1080i, and worst of all, some channels are 720p and some channels are 1080i. So there's the long HDMI delay whenever they change channels. Setting the DirecTV box to always just output 1080i doesn't fix the problems, as there still seems to be a new HDMI handshake when they go from channel to channel. So before he goes and replaces a JVC that he otherwise loves, is there some way they could have all of his sources constantly upscaled to one consistent resolution so that the JVC never does a super slow HDMI handshake? So clearly the answer is but couldn't his receiver do this? Couldn't you set the receiver to scale it? Because the 4300H should have a video scaler involved on its HDMI sources.
So that is the initial thought, and I thought experiment went through that. So you know that whenever you switch sources, right?
Yeah.
There is a new HDMI handshake with your AV receiver.
Yes.
Sometimes you can hear the relay switching, but you'll see the front panel blip, and sometimes there's even like a little audio squelch on occasion. But there's a new HDMI handshake when you switch sources. So it is renegotiating a new handshake when you switch HDMI inputs through your AV receiver, even when the AV receiver is always scaling to one particular output resolution, which means it's going to blank the JVC and you're going to have to wait 30 seconds for the picture to come back.
That stinks.
So
external scaler is your solution then.
Yeah, the safe answer here is an HD Fury, and the one you would want to get is the linker, because the linker is the one that does scaling, right? So there's the integral, the linker, and is it Vertex or Vortex? One of those two. I think it's Vertex.
I would hope it would be Vertex. That'd make a lot more sense than Vortex.
I think that's what it is. But yeah, the one you would want to get is the linker, because you don't need all the abilities of the Vertex, and that's much more expensive. And so the reason you would want to get an HD Fury linker is because there you can set the output resolution, and it will maintain that connection with your JVC. So as far as the JVC is concerned, it never switched sources. Nothing ever happened. It only sees the linker, and that's as far as it sees down the signal path, and the linker is always outputting the same thing. So it keeps your JVC in one mode, and there's no new handshake, because the linker then does the handshake with everything downstream from it. But it keeps that
$180.
$180. So it is
Vertex, by the way. It's not Vortex.
It's Vertex,
Vertex.
okay. Yeah. But it's $180 to solve this problem. That's a lot cheaper than getting a whole new 4K HDR projector. So think of it that way. Yeah.
But if the only option is to get a new projector, what could we possibly recommend for around $4,000? About the $4,000 price range, is there anything else out there that with a compatible picture quality? Well, we were just talking about the other JVCs that were out there,
but they're no better.
They're not going to be they're not going to be any better, right? Yeah. Wow, I agree with your wife, man. That's really annoying.
Oh yeah, it's a usability problem. There's no question about it.
I guess. See, my thing is that I only ever use like one source.
Yeah.
So, I don't have cable because I don't I don't pay the man. But the only time I ever watch TV is like the Super Bowl or the Olympics.
Well, I mean, here's where like that original Apple TV 4K's stupid thing of everything just gets converted to the exact same signal type no matter what. When they originally released it and didn't do any kind of format switching, I mean, that would kind of actually be helpful in this scenario if that were your only source. But I mean, I don't think there is a really great alternative. The one I would point you to would be in Sony's lineup. I would point you to the 385 because going down to the 285 means not as good black levels, not as bright HDR.
Dude, this thing's $8,000.
But the 385 is $8,000 exactly. This is the problem. So this is why $180 for the HD Fury Linker seems like a much better potential solution to this. Yeah.
All right. So who do we have left, Rob?
We got a lot of people left, but we have Francis, who wrote to us on Facebook. We have Chad, Nelson, scrolling, Abu, Greg, David, Jack, Antoine, and Everett. We have all of your questions. We will answer them next week.
We will be answering them. Don't worry. We'll be a little bit quicker next week because we don't have to read these 20,000 names.
This is true.
our great donors. First of all, yes, thank all of our donors from this week that helped with our listener donation pledge drive that happened. We want to thank Anonymous, James, and Dipan for setting that up for us, and to all of our listeners, and there are so many of you, so thank you.
Yes, yeah. So Anonymous, James, Dipan, thank you so much for doing the dollar for dollar matching for up to $300. So we have the whole list of names that we repeated. You can go back to the beginning of the podcast to hear that full list of names. It's late.
I will probably put them on the website as well.
For sure.
In the show notes. So we'll put them in the show notes. So
absolutely. Yeah, avrant.com for the show notes. Links for stuff that we talked about will be there too. And I haven't even really mentioned it explicitly on the podcast itself. If you go to the complete 2-hour video versions on YouTube, I'm now putting in timestamps for each person. So if you want to skip around, you can do that. You can click on the link and it'll take you right to the time for when we start talking about a new person's questions.
Look at you go. You're a crazy person. All right. So that's going to be it. We also, I guess, want to thank Tom for talking us up to Elite Home Theater CD.
Yeah. Congrats, Tom. Really nice chairs. Thanks so much. And our 59 patrons, including Jeff, over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast, if you would like to be a patron and give us a monthly donation automatically.
There you go. So thank you, all of you. And if you want your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.